I just got a call 30 minutes ago, literally from a friend of mine in federal law enforcement. He said there was also a ricin envelope sent to the President of the United States, and it was intercepted, as was the one to General Mattis, or now Secretary of Defense Mattis. And also, it wasn't, the other third one was not sent just to a captain in the Navy. It was sent to the CNO. The CNO is the Chief of Naval Operations. I mean, that's a big guy. So what we're seeing, in my opinion, and based on my warning that I gave before Branson, if everyone will put this into context, I'm going to ask you to put away your hate, even if you hate me. I'm going to ask you to put away your indignant continual diatribes on the internet, and this is about people's lives being saved. And ladies and gentlemen, if you can just listen to the information, take it to the Lord in prayer, I think you'll have a different outlook after the 2 hours. And Doug, when we get into 10 minutes below or right before my time is up, would you let me have that 10-minute warning? Because I want to pray for everyone that has ears to listen and that has eyes to see and have hearts that are open, because problem is, and this is what's really troubling to me, before Branson, I don't know if it was 60 days before or 30 days, but at least 2 months, I know it was 2 months, I made the statement, the word normal will no longer apply after Branson. Now, we're already seeing that in the Supreme Court nomination. This is the most horrific attack on the law of the land, on any etiquette, on any protocol. And what is happening, ladies and gentlemen, it's Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, I think number 13, that's being in place. They are throwing at Justice Kavanaugh every bit of horse manure that they can find. Now, look at who is behind this. I'm going to say some things tonight that some of you won't be able to handle unless God gives you the understanding. It's not that it's deep, it's not that it's hidden from you, but it's that your hearts are closed off, and that only God can open hearts, Doug and Joe, and I can't do that. So I'm asking that you put your, if you will, bias, hatred, anger, and by the way, isn't it interesting, the people that hate us monitor every word? You know, it goes through in the civilian realm and into the federal agency realm. But one of the things about Branson that was so critical, and I think it's important that people understand, is we had one of the smartest men in the world there, by others' statements, who was Hugo de Garis. And Hugo de Garis has a pedigree that basically is pretty much unequaled. And for instance, I would say this, for those of you who basically are, I'm sorry, I've got to kill this call, Doug. I thought I turned it off. For those of you who are wanting to know where we're headed, I think that the Branson Conference was the most important thing that I've heard. Now, obviously, I'm going to say that, and people say, that's just self-interest. No, because Hugo de Garis, who's coming from a total non-Christian scientific perspective, basically told everybody that if we don't deal with artificial intelligence and the whole artificial brain issue, and if you will, sentence being given to machines, and I believe only sentence in machines can be achieved through demon possession, that we're in big trouble. And he talked about the Artilect War, and Artilect is another, his word, actually he's the one that coined it, artificial intellect. Now, who is Hugo de Garis? Well, he's the director of the Artificial Brain Lab, Institute of Artificial Intelligence. He set up the Department of Computer Science at Xiamen University in China for 12 years. Professor that has the credentials of both math and physics unequaled. I think, Doug and Joe, you would say this, that has to be one of the most provocative, thought-provoking presentations you guys have ever seen. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, absolutely. It was unbelievable, and it was something that I'll definitely remember for the rest of my life.
You know, there's just something about him, Steve. Something about Hugo, Mr. de Garis. There's just something about in the way he presented that. I can't explain it. It was just.
Well, I think one of the things that's interesting is, you know, contrary to, you know, what people may or may not believe, when we set up these conferences, we really seek God on it, and that seems corny to someone who doesn't know the Lord. But in this case, if you notice, his primary premise is we either deal with artificial intelligence and stop it now, or it's the end of humanity. Is that a fair statement, Joe and Doug?
Yeah, what he said actually was the only way to handle this now would be to kill the millions of people who are proponents, the creators and the puppet masters pushing this artificial intelligence agenda. To do that now, or billions would die later because it was not done now.
Very well stated, and I think it's important that people understand. Now, the issue that he introduced us to was species dominance, which dominates our global politics essentially. It's all the money in the world that the evil ones, it doesn't matter if it's the international bankers, the globalists, the Satanists, the fallen angels, they're putting into place a series of, I would call them spiritual, technological inventions and even contrivances to just do one thing, and that's to destroy every last human being on the planet. Now, what he said is really important. He said humanity is bitterly divided over rival answers to the question, should humanity build artificial intellects, godlike massively intelligent machines, and or not? And what Joe just said, everyone, is exactly what he said. So isn't it interesting when I put out my Terminated, and the Terminated basically had the statement that we're at the end of man is here. People said, oh, you're a fear porn monger, you're a this, you're a that. Coming from a totally non-Christian, purely scientific empiricism, I thought it was interesting, Doug and Joe, that he arrived at the same thing I said in my book on Terminated, the end of man is here. Here lies the human race who refuse to acknowledge their end when it stared them in the face. Now, where we're going tonight with all this, it's been a wild day. To say it's been a wild day is an understatement. Without going into massive, I can say this, massive rabbit trails. Thank you. That's the word. I'm accused of it. I don't even know how to relate to it. But rabbit trails, I have received information from FEMA, former FEMA, high-ranking individuals, from law enforcement, and from others as to what I'm going to say. In May of last year, which would have been May of 2017, when we were on our trip to Peru, the True Legends crew, I met someone that appeared in Peru. They weren't officially with us, but they were invited to join us. I'll just leave it as that. And these are two of the smartest people I know in the world. They go all over the world, and when the smart people have problems, they bring in these. And that's not being flamboyant, or that's not these computer experts. And he told me last year, and I think he even said it on your show, Doug, that AI is complete. What I would like people to pray about and embrace is this. If you are dealing with a supernatural intelligence that has been at war with God and has pretty much enveloped the scientific community with technology that is 4,000 years in the future because it's 8,000 years in the past. It's not an oxymoron. And now you see the absolute contempt for humanity that's being exhibited by even some of the people that are so pro transhumanism that they look favorably to the destruction of mankind. So what Professor DeGarris talked about is the cosmos, that's his word, like cosmic, only cosmos, those who are in favor of basically building artilects. And in the mathematics field, he's pretty much one of the top guys in the world, and when he was talking about this, he was talking in terms of septillion, thousands of trillions, and he was talking about that's how more advanced the cosmos believe they're going to build humanity. So in essence, men become God. And then he talked to the Terrans opposed to building artilects, and Terra comes from the word in Latin earth, meaning we're earth-centered. And those are the people that would be the resistance in the Terminator movies. And then he said that there were cyborgists who want to modify themselves to become like gods, but they want to rule over the remaining humanity. They want to be part machine, part human, and by adding artificial components to their own brains. And he took a poll of how many people at Branson would be in favor of, was it Joe, becoming Cosmos versus Terrans?
I forget the terms, but Terra was for the people who would not accept the artificial enhancement.
Right. And now here's what's interesting. Everybody in China, when he asked that question to students and the general population, raised their hand to want to become cosmos. In other words, they want to quit being humans and they want to merge with the ultimate godhood mind that's being promised to them. When he was in Branson, I believe it was only two people that said they would want to be cosmos. And I thought, well, there go the intelligence agents. I think one of them walked out, and one of them became, obviously, but they were honest, they raised their hands. But I told Professor Degueris after we, got through with his talk, and we're sitting in the back room, et cetera, where all the speakers gathered, I said, Dr. Garris, you're astounded at the response you got from this group, because in Branson, to a man, let's say 2 out of 3,000 approximately, were in favor of it versus all the rest being against it. And he was flabbergasted by the response. Now, the reason he was flabbergasted is because he'd never seen so much response against it. Keep in mind, he's on the team that you'd either, as Joe said, kill all the AI proponents, and those are his words, I'm just quoting, or they're gonna extinct the human race. But I told him, I said, Dr. Degueris, there is another group that you must be aware of. And I said, those are Bible-believing, prophecy Christians who know what the Bible says in the book of Revelation about what the end of the world or the end of the age is going to look like. He had never heard that before, and he was quite taken back by it. By the way, he kept telling me and others, Doug, as you know, and Joe, that he was blown away by this quote. He called it a religious group. And obviously, I said, this isn't a religious group. This is people that know their Bible and believe the words of Jesus Christ. So, that's all set up to tell you all that were not at Branson. I consider, and I think everybody I've talked to, which is hundreds and hundreds of people, consider his speech one of the most important things they have ever heard in their life. And I will say this, I thought it was one of the best presentations I've ever heard in my life. Would you guys concur?
Absolutely.